Boatworks today is sponsored by Total Boat and Alexial Yacht Coatings, as well as supported by the generosity from the beautiful folks over on Patreon. Thank you so much. So welcome back to the shop, everybody. Hope you are doing well. My name is Andy with Boatworks today, and for this video, I think I'm finally at a point now where I've got enough information that I can comfortably give an update as far as what's been going on the past month or so, maybe even 2 months. It's been quite a while. But there's a reason for that, which I will get into here shortly. Now, I've posted some of these updates over on Patreon over the past few weeks here, but I haven't posted anything here to the public, mainly because I didn't have a full understanding of what the situation really looked like. I do now, or at least a much better situation. I'll know more here on January 8th, but again, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So for any of you that aren't familiar with the situation, I'm just going to blow through this real quick so I can get everybody up to speed. So 15 months ago, yes, 15 months ago, I jacked up my right shoulder and I wasn't able to get anything approved through insurance, whether to go through physical therapy, get an MRI done, nothing. Nothing was able to get approved until this late summer, early fall, which I finally got approved for physical therapy. So I went in and did that twice a week for 4 weeks. And that ended up being cut short because there was no progress. Actually, I was sliding backwards. There was no improvement. I was losing range of motion. Pain levels were getting much more increased. It was going backwards. So the physical therapist, which was awesome, by the way, Matt, thank you very much. I'm sure I'll be seeing you here again in the spring, or maybe sooner. But he made the call that, until we get some imaging done, we're not going to go any further with this because he was a little concerned that there might be some, additional damage being done by trying to do the physical therapy. So in between that time of when physical therapy got canceled and I was able to get in for the MRI, my therapist and doctor both strongly urged me to limit any activity as much as possible. So that's the reason I haven't done any work here because, well, as much as I want to try and get back to norm, I'm not going to shoot myself in the foot in that process. So made sense to me. So then I was somehow able to get an MRI scheduled. And I got that done this past Tuesday. Today is Saturday morning. So I was able to get the MRI done on Tuesday morning, and I got the results back from radiologist, the written result, or the written summary. I haven't talked to the doctor yet, but I got the written summary back, was it yesterday? Yesterday or the day before? I'm not quite sure. So I spent a little bit of time trying to understand what exactly was being said because it's all in doctor language and, well, I'm no doctor. So it took me a little bit of time to kind of, understand what really the description was. And I'm going to say I'm a little concerned. I don't know if it's one of those situations where it's not as bad as how it sounds, or if it's as bad as it sounds, and I'm not going to know that until I'm able to meet with the surgeon on January 8th. So needless to say, I understand, what kind of can of worms this is, opening up, asking for input to the internet, but that's fine. I also know that there are a lot of people in the medical field that watch this channel, and, everybody's got whether you've got some input, some opinions, or even some past experience with something like this, any and all information, opinions, whatever, is welcome. In my mind, the better understanding I have of all this when I go in and talk to the doctor, that's just going to make it easier for me to make sure I'm asking him the right questions, right? So with that said, I'm going to read through the actual summary, pretty much word for word, and then I'm going to go back and kind of break down my understanding of each of these situations. Now, I'm not saying that I have an accurate understanding, but I think I'm in the ballpark. I think I'm pretty good for a layman's understanding of it. So with that said, let me grab the paperwork. All right, let's just go from the top here. Now this is for an MRI that used contrast. Findings here. Okay. There is a complete tear of the supraspinatus tendon anteriorly with a retraction of about 1.5 centimeters, which is a little over half an inch. The subscapularis adjacent has a partial tear without retraction. There is fluid in the subacromial subdeltoid bursa communicating with the joint. And I'll come back to that one because there's some doctor language going on there. The infraspinatus and teres minor look intact, which is good. Bicep tendon is slightly medially located within the groove, but itself does not look torn. It's consistent with a partial tear of the subscapularis. The AC joint is within limits. The acromion is a type 2 with a curved undersurface. And again, I'll come back to that one as well. The superior labrum is slightly irregular, but I do not see a definitive tear. Now, under the impressions then, this is just kind of like the cliff notes of the summary. Complete tear of the supraspinatus with some retraction, partial tear of the subscapularis, and then slight irregularity of the superior labrum, which could represent a labral tear. That he kind of contradicted himself a little bit, but I'm not sure. So coming back to the talking points here about the complete tear of the supraspinatus with retraction of 1.5 centimeters. Now, my understanding, and again, a lot of this I didn't know anything about. I had to do the deep dive. Google was my best friend, and YouTube University to try to understand some of this terminology. But my understanding is that when you have retraction of it, or full separation with retraction, that tendon or ligament, whatever it is, whatever supraspinatus is, that can retract up to a certain point, and then beyond that distance, whatever it's 3 centimeters. I think that was kind of the number I kept on coming across. But once it retracts too far, then surgery is no longer even an option. Think of it like a turtle pulling its head back into its shell. It would just retract to the point where there's nothing left to grab onto to pull it back into position and anchor it to the bone. But I don't know what that actual distance is. Right now, if 3 is that magic number, I'm already halfway there. So I guess one of the questions I have for the doctor is, how fast or how rapidly will that continue to retract? How long, and that directly plays into how long can I possibly wait to have this procedure done without really setting myself, too far backwards, right? So that's one thing. Let's see. The other part, there's fluid in the subacromial subdeltoid bursa communicating with the joint. Now this one, I didn't really think much of it until I started dissecting the language here. Let me get some of the terminology and I'll knock it out of the way. Now the bursa, my understanding is, think of the bursa like a bit of a cushion, like a fluid-filled cushion between the joints. So that's what allows your joints to be able to rotate rotate freely without having like a bone-on-bone action kind of going on. Now, when he says there's fluid in the subacromial deltoid with communication with the joint within the joint space, communication within the joint space is kind of like a doctor language for saying there's bone-on-bone activity going on. And because there's fluid in that joint, to me, what kind of makes sense, and again, I'm spitballing here. I'm no doctor, but what kind of makes sense to me is that bursa or that cushion ruptured, and that's the fluid that's in the joint. And because that bursa ruptured and it's no longer doing its job, that's why I'm getting bone on bone. Now, it explains a few things. With the movement that I'm able to make, the pain and the sound, like you can hear some crunching. Not real good, but that's what makes sense to me. Now, whether that's an accurate assessment or not, or explanation, I don't know. And again, if you have any input or experience with this, let me know. Teres minor, that looks fine. Bicep tendon, that looks okay. The AC joint is within limit. The acromion is a type 2 with a curved undersurface. Now, this is something I didn't know about. The acromion, I guess, it's part of like the shoulder blade or the bone. It's bone. And when they say it's a type 2 curvature, that means the bone has started to kind of curve. It's supposed to be more flat, but in my case, it's being a type 2, it's more hooked. And when that happens, that edge of the bone then is able to rub and kind of abrade a tendon. Irritates things, which makes sense because the more, 5 minutes of moving, my arm was shot. So that kind of makes sense. But that's what that is. So my understanding on the fix is essentially they got to go in with like a Dremel tool and carve away the curved part of that bone. That doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun. And the superior labrum, slightly irregular, but I do not see a definite tear. Now, this kind of brought up something interesting. When I was in PT, Matt he gave me like a 1 pound weight. And he said, just kind of hang it down and, relax your muscles up in your shoulder. Well, as I started to relax my muscles, my arm would literally start to roll out of the socket or out of the joint. And I never fully relaxed it because I didn't want to find out what was going to happen. But I mentioned that to Matt. I'm like, should it feel like my arm's going to fall out of the joint? And he's like, no. I'm like, here, feel this. So he was feeling my shoulder, and I was letting everything relax, and it was extending, kind of pulling out. He's like, yeah, let's just stop right there. He's like, I don't think we're going to do this one anymore. So, going back to if there's a possible issue within the labrum, I kind of suspect that there is just because of that. But again, this is one of those things for the doctor. So again, like I mentioned, I don't know if it's one of those deals where the summary, where it sounds worse than what it really is. But to me, again, just, not knowing much of anything, just trying to figure it out as we're going through this, it kind of sounds like that I'm set up for a complete shoulder rebuild. Now, whether that's the case or not, I'm not sure. But when you're talking about having to do 3, potentially 4 tears, one of them being a full separation, as well as potentially replacing a bursa, the cushion, I don't know how you do that, as well as repair the labrum, you're talking about 5 areas within an area that's only this big. That doesn't leave a lot of other things in that space that's not being touched. So, to me, it kind of sounds like a full shoulder rebuild, like a 1972 restoration, right? Fitting. But again, I don't know. This is where I'm looking for some input. Anybody has some prior experience with this? I would like to hear your thoughts. So going forward, how does it look like all this is going to play out? Well, obviously I got to meet with the doctor on the 8th. But I can tell you between now and then, I'm not going to do much of anything. I'm certainly not going to do anything that's going to risk potentially doing more damage. The last thing that I want to see or do is to have that tendon or ligament, whatever it was that was fully separated. Last thing I want is for that to pull a full turtle on me. And I'm stuck with this for the rest of my life. I'm only 51. I am not going to deal with this shit for the rest of my life. So if there's anything that I can do to kind of help this process along, I'm going to do it. It might mean I'm going to have to get pretty creative with some stuff as far as, with this channel and with work and whatever, but it is what it is. Priorities are priorities. And for me right now, priority number 1 is getting this issue resolved. Now, that brings up, at this point, I think it's pretty safe to say that some type of surgery is going to be in my future. I don't think that there's any way around that. Physical therapy can do a lot of things. It's not going to fix this. I mean, it's not going to fix what's broke. Like broke. It can fix what's damaged, but not necessarily broke, separated, done. That's a surgical kind of a thing. Now, as far as timing, what the big question that I have when I go in on the 8th is that I want to know if there's a way that I can kind of nurse this along until spring and have surgery done, late spring, early summer. But there again, I'm kind of fighting that, time of the longer I wait, the more that tendon, whatever it is, could continue to retract. I don't know. I don't know how all that works. I don't know how fast that starts to turtle on me. What I absolutely do not want to hear is that, the surgery should have needed to have been done like yesterday. So we're going to get you lined up and we're going to get this taken care of in January. That's my worst case scenario. Just for me, it's a lot easier to be laid up in the spring, summer, and fall than it is in the winter, just because there's just responsibilities that need to be done here. Being laid up in the winter on a day-to-day basis would introduce a whole host of issues. So I'm hoping that that's not going to be the case, but I guess given the fact that there was a full separation, which I was not expecting that one, I'm going to be perfectly honest about that. But given that fact, I'm not holding my breath that I'm going to be able to hold off on this until springtime, but we'll see. So enough on that. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I did want to give an update just to answer some questions. No, I haven't died, and no, I have not quit or shut down the channel. I'm temporarily on hold until I get some more information. And when I get that, I will share that here. And in the meantime, try and put together a plan moving forward. And on that note, I am going to button this up. So as always, have a very Merry Christmas. Have a safe New Year's. Thanks for watching, and I will see you again very, very soon.
This has been a Boatworks Today production.